And we're live again.
We're live again.
Great to be back, Pablo. Let's do a fun exercise today.
Okay.
So this exercise is name 3 male role models and 3 female role models in your life, and they cannot be family.
Oh,
And just to kind of open this up, this is something that I got together with my buddies, Eddie and Marshall, which they deserve the credit for this idea, but it was a really cool exercise. We got together, we're having food, this and that, and then Eddie poses that question, and then it made me really think, who's a role model in my life that isn't family? So
very cool.
So you can kind of share with us, if you're open to it, who maybe those might be, and we can work through, and I'll share with you who mine are, and they could obviously change, right? But I think it's a really cool exercise.
It is, because I'm going through the cobwebs trying to figure out, because, the minute you said it, before you finished the sentence, I was going to say, well, my uncle raised me.
Right.
Because my dad used to work at night.
Yeah, but you can't do family.
You can't do family. So I was going to throw my uncle and my dad in there somehow, but you can't do family. Well, one person that I look up to and admire a lot is Jordan Peterson. So I would have to throw Jordan Peterson in there. I think he's gone through a lot in his life, but he's gone through a lot lately. Lately being the last 10 years or so that he was catapulted into the limelight. And he sticks to his guns, to his ideas.
Yeah.
And he seems to be able to, if he realizes that he's made a mistake, own up to it.
That's something a role model should do.
Yeah, so that's one guy. And he's always, he's come up with the 12 Rules of Life and stuff like that. I think it's an excellent book. And so anyway, he would be one of them.
Yeah.
Another guy that we talk about a lot, another one that I would say is Joe Rogan. And you had mentioned that he seems to be able to stay humble, or seems like he's still the average person, and he creates questions that he's okay with letting the world know, hey, I don't know anything about this, but I'm willing to learn. So teach me. And in that process, his audience learns. And I think that's one of the reasons why he is the number one, I think, podcast in the world. Yeah. And you mentioned that he's got extreme amount of power, right? I mean...
Yeah, well, when Peterson was on this last time with Rogan, he mentioned that in that process of being genuine and curious, the whole audience goes on that journey with you and learns with you. But these are genuine questions that he has. It's not like he's just posing a question with a... he's human, right? And we can all make... we all have, let's say, a bias, but it seems like he's not trying to push an agenda narrative. It's a true, genuine question. How does that work? Or what does that mean? If you can be humble and open to always learning, he's been able to handle the fame, Rogan, it seems, and the money, and still have it together. At least that's, what it seems, which is great. That's a great role model. Both of them. Peterson, a guy who has just the way that he looks at life and his experiences, having sat with so many people as a clinical psychologist and heard of all the things that they've gone through, and then he shares that he learned from those experiences that even when life is you've been dealt the worst card of, let's say, in life, the worst set of cards or whatever, there are some people that still look up and still have a hope. And he's like, wow, that's amazing that there are people that are still hopeful and still positive and trying to look up after going through what they've gone through. So, yeah, Peterson's solid too. I think both of those on the male role model list are up there, definitely up there. Because what I think of a role model, because this is the question again with my buddies, was they posed the question of role model, and then I thought, well, first off, what is a role model to me?
Mm-hmm.
And to me, a role model is someone that my future children, I would want them to emulate. That's what a role model is to me.
Wow.
It might be different for you, right? The definition of a role model. And so I think those are both great. One person that was on my list, because I really gave it a lot of thought. I didn't want to just throw out a name, right? One person on my list was Jocko Willink.
Oh.
And I think his message is solid. And what was cool about the exercise also was that, we're at a bar, having little. None of us drank, by the way, which was interesting. We're at a bar just having finger foods.
Oh.
And none of us drank alcohol, but we were kind of like challenging each other's role models that we were putting out, right? Because one of my buddies says, well, Jocko, if you believe in thou shalt not kill, he's a Navy SEAL, trained Navy SEAL, and he's killed a lot of people, probably. So if a role model to you is somebody who shouldn't do that, then maybe they won't be on your top. And that's why I think it's a really cool question, because he's making me like, oh wow, like that's an interesting part. But
well,
he was
it's
doing it.
thought-provoking for, the folks that are tuning in to us and listen to us. Pick up your 3. What is it?
3 male role models and 3 female role models.
And it cannot be your family member.
It cannot be family. Yeah. No. It's. It's a really cool exercise that they came up with. But I asked you, and I'm like, hey, why don't we throw it online and see, for me, Jocko Willink, because he seems to have it all together.
Uh-huh.
Discipline equals freedom. He's all about training your mind, your body, and also now he's doing like children's books, and he's trying to help build the character of children at a very young age, to be able to handle bullying and handle life and its adversities.
Very cool.
Not to veer too much off topic, but we met a gentleman the other day, 84-year-old Korean veteran, very nice man. And he threw out something to us that early on in life, he came across an adversity that his wife was handicapped, and he didn't know it when he married her.
Right.
And then in that process, he said this quote, and I want to get it right. I don't have my phone on me. I wrote it down, but do you remember the exact quote?
Yes, it's something like, in every adversity, there's the seed of a better and
greater future.
Greater benefit.
Future benefit.
Right. We're kind of changing it, but in every adversity, there is the seed of a
greater benefit.
Good and greater benefit. Yeah.
And if you, at the time that you're coming across adversity, it's hard to think of that. But if you know that going in as a fact, then you'll believe it and you'll turn adversity into something positive. And he was sharing that he did. Because of that, he had to get extra jobs. He got into investing in properties and creating a portfolio that one can only dream of.
Right.
Which was amazing.
And he was very down to earth, very, very amiable, very nice.
Yeah.
That's what it's all about, really.
Yeah.
I mean, look, having more money, it's just having more money, but it doesn't really scale you in terms of a human being.
Right.
Okay? In order to grow as a human being, you have to go through some hardships. And we don't want our kids to go through hardships, but they have to if they're to become the men and women that they will become. You just can't have an easy life and come out with some character and fortitude at the end of the day. Hopefully you could, Now, there's a lot of people that say, that by reading books, you learn of the hardships and the struggles of other people, and you can bring that to yourself. And um, that can happen, I would imagine. But
Yeah.
going through things is what really teaches you. Like this morning, I was telling you some of the deals in real estate that, looking back, you know, I, I, I had it done, and then all of a sudden I said something which was not aggressive, or at the time I didn't think it was offensive in any way or form, you know. But now, years later, and looking back, that's not something I would have said. And potentially, in my mind, based on my experience, I fault that as killing the deal.
Yeah.
You just never know.
Or also like some of the situations where you lost money from
Yeah.
people that took advantage, and looking back, but there's nothing like having gone through it yourself, right? Because it pains you.
Oh,
And that's the thing, is that adversity, I believe, builds character, and that's what a lot of these guys push. I think all of them actually, that both Jocko, Rogan, Peterson, they all talk about adversity and overcoming it. That it's difficult. I'm curious if you have any female role models, or you might have to think about it. I had to think about it a few days, to be honest with you, to come up with my solid list, and I'm still working on it. But do you have any female role models that...
well, it's interesting. I have one more male that...
Okay.
Yeah, you didn't say anything about whether they're still alive or not.
No.
So, I wish I could say Jose Marti was a role model for me. I haven't read enough, unfortunately. I'm embarrassed to say. I haven't read enough on him, but I'm sure that he would be one. But one that I have read a lot on, and that I admire tremendously, is Cyrus the Great. I've read a lot about him. He united his people. And one thing that distinguished him from all the other generals that I've ever read about is that even when he conquered a city or a province or a country, he allowed those people to continue with their religious beliefs. He didn't come in and wiped out everything. He brought standards and laws and stuff like that. I think he adhered, and I hope I'm not mistaken on this, to the Code of Hammurabi. So, but he had his own standards and laws, but he allowed every country that he conquered, or province or whatever, to continue with their religious beliefs, as long as those beliefs didn't, affect or interfere with his governing. Now, he was a general, and he was a fighter. He was in the wars. He killed people too, I'm sure. But I think Cyrus the Great, that's why very few are called the Great, And I've read a lot about Cyrus the Great, and he's somebody that I really like.
And Cyrus the Great, no, I think that's really cool that he allowed them to... He didn't just wipe them all out, like you said, which was very common back then. Like Genghis Khan and all these guys, they were brutal.
Brutal.
Where was Cyrus
In fact,
the
Genghis
Great?
Khan had a thing where if he conquered Genghis Khan, if you didn't, what do you say when you give up?
Surrender.
If you didn't surrender to him, he would offer you first the idea, surrender. Okay? He had this mental warfare. He was tremendous in this. He had drums that would beat. He had drummers that would beat drums, and the city that he was going to conquer knew it was him. And you got these drums beating, and when those drums stopped beating, he would invade. But prior to, he would give you the opportunity to surrender, and he would take over, and then he would be more lenient. However, if you didn't surrender during that period of time, he would conquer and kill everybody. And he had a saying, every man, woman, and child that was standing higher than, I think, the edge of one of the wheels of the old cartons, the center spivel, okay? You had to be below that in order to survive. Anybody an inch above that, you would be killed. Man, woman, and child. So imagine this. This is the wheel of your cart. You have to be smaller in stature than the center of
So
that
he just
spivel.
killed everybody.
He killed everybody except if you were 2-3 years old. And that was something that I thought was, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway.
So he's not a role model. I mean, there are some things.
Not in that sense.
No. So Cyrus the Great was from where?
Iran. Yeah.
Which was Persia. Right,
Persia.
at the time.
Yeah, Iran. And what he did was, when he was coming about, there were a lot of tribes that were just fighting each other and killing each other. And he came to the conclusion, look, we're a powerful nation, but we're always fighting each other. So what he ended up doing is he took control of a couple of provinces. He built an army, and then he started conquering, but with the idea of uniting the Iranians, because they were, what do you call it? They lived in the desert, and they were nomadic, okay? And so he united all of them, and then he went on and expanded. And but he always had that vision, even from a young age. I don't know what age Cyrus died, but I know he died in battle. And that's another thing, he would fight in the forefront with his people, which when he died was a big loss. But he wasn't one of these generals that just gave orders, and he was there with his people. And a lot of stuff that he did. He forgave a lot of people that were going to be hanged and this and that. And he did a lot of stuff. And one of the things in history that sets him apart is that he didn't destroy their religious beliefs.
Which is what makes America interesting, right? And unique, is that here you have freedom of religion.
Right.
In the United States. Whereas, like, I remember it was a big deal in Cuba, which is where you come from and our family descends from. One of the things Castro did was remove the churches. He didn't want, you know. And I remember there were a few times that I think it was a big deal because the Pope was visiting, but it wasn't like at least for a certain period of time he didn't want Catholicism or certain religion.
Nothing
in the country.
He was an atheist.
So that's interesting, that the United States, it has its flaws and everything, but it has the freedom of religion.
Freedom of speech and religion, yeah.
Freedom of religion.
Very important.
So that's a solid list.
Now, females, I'm having a hard time.
Yeah.
I know, I've read about this, this lady that was burned alive.
Oh,
because she thought she was a witch. They thought she was a witch.
Was it? It'll come to me. It'll come to me. But yeah, she was.
Her life was extremely interesting, and I thought that was an exceptional woman. And then, there's a couple. I need to think about the ladies, but
yeah, it's hard.
I know that Frida Kahlo was a tough character. Tough character.
Yeah. Yeah, for me, so again, thinking like, who would I want my future children to emulate? For the women, female role models, I thought of, one of the first ones I thought was actually Tulsi Gabbard.
Oh, yeah.
She just seems to have her stuff together, seems to, I know she's in politics, right? And so...
Joan of Arc.
Joan of Arc, that was it. Yeah, Joan of Arc. She was a martyr. I don't know too much about the story of Joan of Arc.
She was an exceptional woman. Oh, my God.
Yeah. I don't remember what she was fighting for.
Oh, and she had, I think, visions also, and so she was considered a witch. She was burned alive. Joan of Arc.
Joan of Arc. Yeah. So...
I need to read more on her, but...
yeah. But yeah, Tulsi Gabbard came to mind.
She's cool.
Like when I've heard her speak, she seems solid. and just calls it out and doesn't have a problem calling out whichever side she's calling out. The other person I thought was Sarah Blakely, which I think, I heard her speak. I went to Miami, the 10X event that Cardone put on.
Okay.
And he brought a lot of powerful speakers on that event. It was huge. And she was one of them, Sarah Blakely. And so she shared how she started. She used to go door to door selling, I don't remember if it was like copy machines or fax machines, something back then. And then she eventually created Spanx for women. And owned it outright, I believe, and then recently sold it. I believe it was over $1 billion. But one thing that was really cool about her was when she sold it and made a ton of money. As a businesswoman, she seems to have it together. But one thing she did was she gave a trip to Europe, I believe, to all of her employees, and I think $10,000 as a thank you to all of her employees when the company sold.
That's great.
It was like a round trip to Europe with $10,000 to go and just splurge and have fun. Also, she seems to have her family portion together. Her husband is also a big entrepreneur, and they have kids, and she seems very well-rounded and still seems like somebody you can approach. I've heard her talk and be interviewed many times. It seems like she's still relatable and humble, and that's one thing that I would hope as a role model, that even if you have, let's say, the money or the fame or build something, you can still be grounded. So that she was one of my role models on the female side. So I have two there. And then on the male side, I thought Jocko Willink was one of the ones I thought. And then I also thought Immortal Technique.
Oh, wow.
I put him on there because Immortal Technique, to me, has taught me a lot in terms of history. He's a rapper and everything, but more than anything, to me, he's opened
These
my
rappers
eyes.
are brilliant. Some of these rappers are brilliant.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But he's opened my eyes to a lot of things that have gone down in history that are not cool, whether there's been interventions in other countries from the CIA, from this and that, and that's what he focuses on. And so I like Immortal Technique and also what he stands for, which seems to be a positive message. Get out of let's say, the ghetto. He grew up in in Harlem, really rough. Went through a lot. Went through, I think, the system, somewhat juvenile things, detention centers and whatnot, and then was able to overcome that, and that's his message. So when someone like that goes back to prisons to speak, they'll listen to him.
Sure.
Because he's been there where they were.
Yeah.
You get another guy who's never been in prison or anything, and you bring him to speak. It's different.
It is. It reminds me of, the example that's given time and time again. Be careful who you take advice from.
Yeah.
There's nothing against college professors, but some of them, are teaching business classes, but they've never owned a business of their own. Right. Okay? And there's a lot of stuff that goes on when you own a business that the books don't tell you. So if you have someone that has owned 1, 2, or 3 different businesses, and then it's a college professor teaching, you can make the distinction between what the book says and something that you've experienced in the process of your businesses.
Real life.
Real life.
Yeah. That is the big question always.
The balance. Yeah. So but this is very nice. I like this. This is, I'm definitely going to put some time into it. And then we can have a podcast number 2 on this one.
Yeah. You need to figure out your female role
models.
And
absolutely.
then, and then I still got to come up with a couple more names. But one that I thought was really interesting, because also in this process,
Well, what did they say?
Right. Yeah. They my buddies
Uh-huh.
gave names,
Okay.
and one of the ones that I was sharing with you earlier, which I thought was really interesting, was Dick Hoyt.
Dick Coit?
Hoyt
Hoyt? Oh, okay.
and um, Eddie, my buddy, was sharing that was one of the top guys on his list, which I thought was really a powerful story. I had never heard of this man, but I was sharing with you. He was a man who his son had cerebral palsy,
Okay.
and they realized that the only time that the son, I believe, smiled or showed happiness was when he was going fast on the wheelchair.
Fast on the wheelchair.
Yeah,
Okay.
and that the father dedicated the rest of his life to joining tournaments and different, I don't know if it was in the Olympics or whatnot.
Oh, wow.
To take
Very
his son
cool.
and dedicate the rest of his life to his son. So it's not necessarily someone that's extremely well known or anything, but
Correct.
that's a role model.
Oh,
You
yeah.
know? Because
That would be one of mine.
yeah,
Absolutely.
and it's hard to pick because, but when you go back in history, there are some.
Well, as you're talking, I'm thinking Kobe Bryant was,
Kobe Bryant was definitely named. in there.
somebody that I looked up to a lot.
Yeah,
I mean, look, he wasn't perfect. You can go back in his life, but nobody is.
right.
But Kobe Bryant. I like a lot of things that Shaquille O'Neal is doing. Shaq. He turned down like a $50 million deal from, I guess, a shoe company, maybe even Nike. I'm not sure if it was Nike. And he started making shoes of his own. He went to Walmart so that they could make shoes, I think, under $25. And the reason that happened is because one time playing basketball, some mom said, "You're the reason why I can't get shoes for my kids." And that, like stuck with him. And he says, "What do you mean you can't get shoes for your kids?" "Yeah, your shoes are so expensive. They're $700, $800, $900 or something like that." And he said, "You know what? I'm going to check into that." And he checked into that, and he started a company
Interesting.
with Walmart. And his shoes are like, I think, under $25.
Well, I remember growing up going to Payless Shoes, which I don't even know if they're around anymore, and they had the Shaq shoe.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, and so it was a less expensive shoe than the Kobe Bryant's. I remember I had a buddy, Adam, that was big into basketball. He would get the Kobe Bryant's, the first versions. They looked like space shoes, spaceships, weird looking, but they were Kobe Bryant's. And
Expensive, right?
Oh, super expensive, very expensive. So yeah, Shaq, I think, was able to do that, that's cool.
And
That's
he's
very
got
cool.
it. He's got it together. He's told his kids, "Hey, you don't graduate with." I think they have to graduate with 2 degrees. I think,
Oh well.
and you don't get a penny.
Steve Harvey's another guy that seems to have it together.
I like him a lot. I like Steve Harvey a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, this, went through, I think he was living out of a car. I
Yeah.
saw him speak also. I think he was living out of a car for some time.
Oh yeah, he was.
Selling life insurance or insurance and trying to just get by.
Yeah. And he talks about, see, we need to be united. There's no such thing as, you're black, I'm white, this and that. Steve Harvey, the people that took him in, I believe it was a white couple,
Oh yeah, you shared that.
and they loved him to death. I mean, and he loves them.
He got
There's-
a job with them or something?
Yeah,
They
they-
hired him?
Something like that. But I think they took him in, and he loves them to death. So Steve doesn't care what color you are, He's going to let you, Steve Harvey, he's going to let you have it straight. If he likes you, you're going to know it. And if you don't, you're going to know it in the first 5 seconds, because he's going to just let you have it. And, that's the thing that you were mentioning about Joe Rogan, being genuine, down to earth,
Yeah.
There's that old saying that, if you are not a nice person and you make a lot of money, okay, then you are just not a nice person with a lot of money.
Right.
Money doesn't really change the core of the individual.
Yeah.
It just magnifies it. And so if you're
Right.
an idiot and
But
you're dead broke, and you make a lot of money, you're still an idiot.
Well,
There's a bad word that's associated with it. I'm not going to say it.
Yeah. Well, you were sharing earlier that Rogan gave Lex Friedman his watch on the podcast.
Oh, yeah.
Which that watch is worth, I don't know, maybe $10,000 or something like that.
Potentially.
Something
you
like
know,
that.
$8,000 or something like that.
An Omega.
Yeah. Now, the beauty of it, yes, the watch is worth a lot of money. But the beauty of it, as far as I'm concerned, is that he said, hey, dude, that's my favorite watch. So, you know, it's this is one of my favorite, you know, for Joe to part with it, you know. And then he gave some examples of why it was, you know, is the moon phase Omega. And it's hard to part with something that it's your favorite. But he did it for, what's his name?
Lex Friedman. He's a buddy of his.
It's his buddy.
Yeah.
And, you know, and you hear him in the podcast saying, now, you can't take this back now because you said it in public. He goes, no, man, no, that's yours now. And that, by the way, that's my favorite watch.
That's cool. That's
super
just a nice
cool.
gesture.
Oh,
you know?
Super cool. That's what makes Joe different and successful, so genuine, and he's willing to learn. He doesn't care if he looks stupid in some things because we can't know everything.
No,
you know?
No.
So
I think that's one of the keys to growing is being okay, knowing that you don't know it all, and you know, that's where you grow the most. If you go in there thinking that you know it already, you're not gonna.
And you know, these comedians are brilliant.
Yeah. Yeah, some of these comedians,
no,
I think they're firing. Like, I think Robin Williams was a genius.
Absolutely.
I think he was a genius. His mind just worked in a different way.
Absolutely. But Steve Harvey, you know, he has that, what is it, that family program?
Oh, yeah.
Anyway,
Family Feud.
Family Feud, right? And you see him, you know, it's just the reaction. Something happens.
Yeah, he's quick, witty.
Oh, he's quick and funny.
Yeah, it's good timing, comedic timing.
He's just like, and you know, he sits there and he goes, he doesn't say a word, and
everyone's laughing.
I'm just rolling on the floor, you know, because you know it's just.
Yeah, no, he's good.
He's just funny.
He's good.
So these comedians are brilliant, brilliant. Joe is really funny too. I've never seen Joe. You know, we should go see Joe Rogan.
Yeah.
When he's touring, it'd be fun.
When he was before he left Hollywood, he was still in California because he left. I want to say during the pandemic.
Okay.
Either at the very beginning of the pandemic, I believe. I think he mentions in his podcast he didn't like some of the things that were going down in California, and
well, everything was closed down, and
so he went to Texas. But I started going to the Comedy Store with my wife because of Rogan talking about the Comedy Store, and then I got into the different comics. But every time that Rogan was performing, it would be like on a Wednesday night or Thursday night in Hollywood, so that would take an hour and a half to get there. It was always sold out immediately. But I haven't seen much of his comedy.
I've seen a little bit, and he's funny.
But
I haven't seen much either.
But I think his gift is in conversation.
I think so.
Because you look at some people that are hilarious. And, like, you know, you look at, like, the Eddie Murphys and, you know.
He still got it. He's still funny.
He's still funny. And you look at, the Steve Harvey's and Bernie Mac. A lot of these comedians were just hilarious. And I think Rogan's funny, but I think his gift is conversation. But I would love to go see him. Actually, he just opened up his comedy club in Texas. That would be the coolest thing to go.
Let's do it. We're down for it. I'm down for it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool. We'll wrap it up there.
Yeah.
Think of your list.
I got to do homework.